So for today's interview for the Small Cap Showcase, I'm very proud and happy to welcome Tim Fung, who's the CEO of Airtasker, who this year recently debuted on the ASX. And for me as a founder, watching these journeys sort of since 2012 and sort of first coming across the company and then watching their growth and their rise and obviously expansion into international sort of locations, it's been an inspiring story to watch, and it's fantastic to have Tim on as part of the sort of keynote interview today. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
So, mate, obviously big year, big last sort of 12 months for you. What's been that journey for you going from being a private company to now a listed company, and obviously the fanfare and the attention that you received as part of that?
Well, the last 12 months have been really, really an interesting journey, a couple of ups and downs. I reflect back to the beginning of 2020. COVID was, the talk of, the impact that would have on our business. We saw a depression in marketplace volume initially, but then saw that the whole community of taskers and customers really adapted to the situation, and because of our infinitely horizontal marketplace, it actually had a V-shaped recovery and actually ended up being our biggest year in terms of point-to-point growth. Towards the end of the year, we decided to move into becoming a public company. So we spent the next 4 or 5 months up until the 23rd of March working on an IPO. And it was a real journey to be able to do that whilst at the same time keeping all of our growth initiatives still rolling forward. Then since being a public company, look, I think the main difference that we've noticed is that there is a lot more time boundaries when you're listed. You've got quarterly cash flow statements, you've got half-yearly reports and half-yearly results to hit, and then, of course, full-year results to hit too. And so you've got this sort of forced cadence and this forced level of accountability on a quarterly, half-yearly and annual basis. And actually, I think for a startup, that's actually potentially really healthy levels of discipline to have that cadence in place. So look, we're only about 6 weeks into it right now. We have done our first quarterly report, but so far so good.
I was going to say, I did notice in that report or some of the announcement you put out, you are expecting to exceed what you've put out in your prospectus, which is always a nice indication to put out.
So we upgraded our prospectus forecast from $143 million in GMV up to 148 to 152. So a healthy upgrade, and we're seeing things work out really well so far in 2021 calendar year. So it was great to be able to put up that prospectus upgrade.
Now, that's obviously some of the details behind it. Now, let's go back to the story of Airtasker, right? Just in case, someone's been living under a rock and hasn't come across you beforehand. It'd be good to give a bit of a background as far as the origins of Airtasker, and also, like for me, and afterwards I'll sort of ask about this, is who are the taskers, who are the users of it, and just really help sort of identify that.
Well, Airtasker started back in 2011, so it's been almost a 10-year journey for me so far. We had the idea when I was moving apartments, and I asked a friend to help me move. He has a truck that he uses to do deliveries for his frozen chicken nuggets business. So we put all the stuff in the back of the truck, and he helped me move. But this just got us thinking: is like, why do we ask friends and family to do all these kinds of jobs? And what we realized is there's just no real fit-for-purpose way to connect with local services or to connect with people in your local community who can help with these kinds of tasks. And it's kind of crazy because if you look at how far we've come in terms of buying and selling physical products, we've gone from market bazaars all the way through now to this elite e-commerce that happens 3-hour delivery, next day delivery of any item you want straight to your door. And yet the way that people connect with local services is still to, roll the dice and find the first person they find on Gumtree, or ask their cousin for a recommendation or something. And it's kind of crazy. So what Airtasker is doing is we're making a simple e-commerce for local services. And at the same time, we're creating jobs and income for people in our community. And that's really our mission at the heart of Airtasker, is to create jobs, income, and a positive impact on the future of work.
And especially given that last 12 months, it's such a powerful mission to have. And the other thing I really love about how you built into the platform, and I suppose this comes with the territory of e-commerce, is the trust. You mentioned it before, is that typically people just get a recommendation from someone and just roll the dice, right? As you said. But you build in these trust and confidence indicators for anyone looking to do it. And that's really like as a fundamental power that sort of sits behind the user experience. I found that personally important in sort of using Airtasker.
That's right. So one of our marketplace principles at Airtasker is that we create trust through transparency and accountability. So rather than us coming in and like managing and handling tasks and telling people what to do and micromanaging, what we're saying is we believe that people are fundamentally good and can be trusted. We're going to create a transparent system so you can see all of that information. And then we're going to make sure that our taskers are accountable at each step of the transaction, and our customers are accountable too. And we do that through by owning the end-to-end transaction that goes through the marketplace. And that basically makes sure that we've got a record of what's happening at each step. And that's what keeps Airtasker accountable. So yeah, really, instead of creating trust through by nudging things and micromanaging, we're creating trust through transparency and accountability.
Love it. And what have you observed as far as the demographics of, firstly, the taskers, the people obviously fulfilling the jobs? What have you noticed as far as their demographics?
Well, one of the biggest challenges of Airtasker is that we are an infinitely horizontal marketplace. We offer all kinds of services, whether it's from things like cleaning and gardening and handyman jobs, all the way through to surveying and architecture and tax consultancy. And so you've got this really wide breadth of users on our platform. And whilst that is fantastic, we've got this massive total addressable market, it's also challenging because interpreting the data is even more difficult when it's so wide and so unstructured. So when we zoom in a little there, what we have noticed is that we are more of an urban focused company compared to regional areas. So that's really where it's started to really to grow out. Although we're now starting to see regional areas like Newcastle and Wollongong build sizable communities as well. And then within that, on the customer side of the marketplace, the demand side, primarily we're targeting young families and young professionals. And then on the tasker side of the market, there are roughly three groups. We've got students and younger folks who are looking for a flexible style of work. We have freelancers and professionals, so people who have developed skills like graphic designers, gardeners, tax consultants, etc. In that freelance professionals space. And then we have our semi-retiree bracket. So we've got a lot of folks who are in that sort of 55, 60 plus age group who might not suit them to want to work in permanent full-time jobs, but absolutely they're staying active, earning an income, and helping people out and sharing their experience in the local community.
And as you mentioned, like I said, what I love about your business, and I said I admire from a founder to another founder, is you do have those infinite amount of verticals. And the reality is there's verticals that don't even exist today that you could be monetizing sort of 2 to 3 years from now. And so I'm just curious, like, how do you discover those trends? As you said, given it is so wide, how do you discover those trends, and how do you sort of place focus on areas which you see a great opportunity for you to get additional growth or scaling potential, et cetera?
It's a great question. So Airtasker is, as you mentioned, an infinitely horizontal marketplace. Really, we allow our customers to be able to present any problem that they need solved, by humans with skills. And we empower our taskers to be able to solve those problems in any way that they see fit. One of the fantastic things about this marketplace model is that it's our customers who every single day are telling us what the next trend is. And so actually, I think COVID was a great example of this. During COVID, domestic cleaning demand dropped massively because people were at home, they were working from home, and they didn't need a cleaner coming into their home to clean up. But what we saw is that remote fitness instructors spiked massively. Bicycle repairs spiked massively, and people started doing a lot of like home repairs and renovations and things like this. So the marketplace just sort of adapted, and we got told by our customers what the next trends were, what they were demanding. And so having a demand-powered marketplace is really exciting in that regard. The way now that we're actually turbocharging that and taking that to the next level is that we've created a new marketplace model called Airtasker Listings. And what Airtasker Listings enables is our taskers to be able to create predefined packages of services at fixed prices. And they can then put that on the shelves of the Airtasker store. So when you open up our app, you can see all of the different packages that are available. And from that, we're learning even more now about what our taskers' skills are. And we're seeing which of those skills gets real uptake from our customers. And so that's another great source of learning about what the next trends are.
That actually leads to next question quite perfectly. Like, that's obviously a new product, right? So what I would love to know is, what is your product creation model? What is the thinking process? Where does it start from the team members? And then from the, let's say, from the observation in trends through to the ideation, right through to the execution, what does that look like for you?
So I think, first of all, a really interesting clarification here is that when you say what is the product of Airtasker, one thing that we're constantly reminding ourselves of is the product of Airtasker is the marketplace. And so the product isn't just the software that we build, the apps and the website that we've crafted, or the database and the tables. It's actually also about the people in the community and the culture that you're building within that community. So Airtasker, the product, is actually the software plus the community and the people. And so we can't do it on our own. We don't craft the whole product. We actually rely and engage with our community to be able to do that. So in thinking about that, we have a combination. So some things at Airtasker are certainly strategic initiatives that come from the top down and are based on our vision. And so we have a 3-year vision. We cascade that down into strategy. We then cascade that strategy down into areas of investment, which we're willing to explore and to allocate capital to. We then go to the experts in our team, which is what we call the product leadership team. So these are the folks that are overseeing each of the cross-functional teams that we have at Airtasker. They take those areas of investment and they go out and do the deep dive exploration of is this actually possible? Is these goals that have been set realistic? And they really firm out the plan, and that manifests ultimately into OKRs, which is the framework that we use, objectives and key results, for those who aren't familiar with that. From there, it's really our leadership team that holds those teams accountable and guide them along the way as they autonomously go out and try to achieve those objectives and key results. This is definitely something that is constantly evolving at Airtasker. Like, how do you provide that blend of strategic vision compared with autonomy and empowering the people who are close to the ground and closest to the customers? And I think that it's fair to say that we're still figuring out how to get that perfect blend of top-down versus bottoms-up planning.
Gotcha. And also, what's obviously quite unique about you is there's obviously a lot of sort of local market sort of online platforms, but they typically specialize in different verticals. Now, I find it interesting that you weren't the first sort of local marketplace or local services marketplace to launch, but you've obviously become the leading in that time. What do you think is the real sort of differentiator for you that's been able to allow you to do that?
One of the contrarian philosophies that I believe we have at Airtasker is, and there are a couple, we're a kind of contrarian thinking company, but one of the contrarian thoughts, I think, is this idea of the long tail of services. So one of the analogies that I use is the difference between television in 2005 versus YouTube. And so back in 2005, this is just before YouTube had started, the example that I've used is that ABC Studios in the US had Grey's Anatomy, and it was generating tons of money in advertising dollars for them. And I think they quoted something like 20 million people, tune in at every episode of Grey's Anatomy. And they sort of thought, this is where we're on the top of the world. It doesn't get much better than owning Grey's Anatomy. At the same time, on the other side of the US, YouTube was getting built. And the first video on YouTube was some guy at the zoo just going, "Hello, I'm at the zoo." And that was the whole video. And obviously, if you were the ABC exec looking at that, you'd be like, that doesn't stand a chance against Grey's Anatomy. But what I think they missed is that the summation of the inspiration of all these individual people creating all these small videos was absolutely massive. It's not just a guy at the zoo. It's also an unpacking video, a reaction video, a video about investing on the stock market. All of this summation of these ideas was so large. And so if you bring that back to Airtasker, right now, you can hire a plumber or a renovator to do certain types of work for you. And that is certainly a big industry, that big existing industry. But there's also all these like latent skills that people have, whether it's, folding origami cranes, being able to, translate a document from Japanese to Hebrew, whether it's being a comedian who can come and perform at your weekend birthday party, all of these like latent skills. And we believe that the aggregation of all of those long tail of opportunities that come from these skills is massive. And I think what we're starting to see that play out on Airtasker, where it's all of these things that you can't get anywhere else that you can get on Airtasker, actually sums up to quite a sizable marketplace.
And it really is what makes you special. I said it's so surprising when you go and you see the range of different services that are available for people to perform. Now, the other thing that I find interesting is a few years ago, you basically embarked on heading to the UK. How was that experience for you as far as expanding your company from Australia to the UK? How was that? What did you notice was differences in the two markets? And as from a growth rate perspective, how did that really start to, given the size of the population of the UK, how did that really start to change the dynamics of your revenue and your growth?
So the UK has been a great learning opportunity for us so far, and we have a huge amount of aspiration for that market. So I'm telling the story like right from the beginning. So we actually launched into the UK back in 2018. We spent quite a few $1 million over the course of 18 months or so, 2018. And what we proved during that time is that we could proactively set up a team and create that 0 to 1 in the marketplace very, very quickly. In fact, we achieved the liquidity levels that we had in Australia, 3-4 years in. We did that in about 12 months in the UK. So we had millions of dollars of GMV already going through the marketplace by that time. Then what we realized is that if we really want to scale this thing big time, then we don't want to be spending millions of dollars every single time we do that. We were quite inefficient in the way that we built it. So we actually spent the next sort of 18 months after that actually figuring out how to make this machine much more efficient. And so we've converted most of our growth over there from paid performance marketing to more organic marketing through things like SEO and PR and social. And actually, now the UK market is actually already cash flow profitable for us and is still doing millions of dollars of GMV and on that solid trajectory. And now that we've got that, really solid kernel of a marketplace, we're now going to start scaling that model into new international markets. So we've more recently launched into Ireland, Singapore, New Zealand, and the US. And really, I think that it's a matter of timing. It would not have been a good idea to have tried to scale that inefficient model that we did the first time in the UK. We want to make sure that we're scaling something that's really, really efficient. And so we want to take our time in doing that. We don't want to blitz scale the marketplace and just spend like absolutely crazy. We're now operating cash flow positive. That's really important to us to operate in a space like that. Cognizant that we have to invest into new markets, but not doing it in that crazy way. We want to do it in an efficient and responsible way.
And give some insights into how you've actually structured the business to scale, how can I say it, without putting massive resources into the sales side, into the marketing aspect. And I think the other thing you identified is more sort of some of the manual tasks. So give some insights into that, because to me, looking at your business model, that is one of the most powerful aspects I see, is that you do have an ability to infinitely scale across many different verticals, and you don't have a requirement to do that with sales teams, as most sort of as many businesses do.
Yeah, it's a great insight. So if you look at the Airtasker model, I think one of the things that we're most proud of is that we've able to build up a gross margin of around 93% on our revenue. And the reason why we can do that is because we really think about the marketplace that we've built as a machine. And in this machine, we don't want to have to keep fueling it with direct marketing, paying lots of money to acquire customers. We don't want to have like a big sales team that are onboarding people and handling there. We certainly don't want to have manual handling in the system of individual tasks. That would just not be part of the model. And so the way that we really think about it is all about creating marketplace models that reduce friction in our marketplace, so allow things to happen easily, but then also making sure the incentives of everyone in our platform are aligned to wanting the same thing. So you'll notice that, for example, in our fee structure, the way Airtasker earns its revenue, we only recognize revenue when a task is actually completed and a tasker actually receives income. And that means that Airtasker, the customer, and the tasker all wants the exact same thing, which is the job done to the satisfaction of all parties. So by creating that sort of machine that can produce these task outcomes, we don't need to have all of these sales folks, as you mentioned, or all these operational staff. And actually, as we scale into new countries, one of our core theses is that the majority of the investment, the capital allocation that's being made, is actually being made towards teams that are based in Australia, but that are activating markets that are in international geographies. And we are very confident that this model works because actually at Airtasker in Sydney, no one's actually stepped out of Sydney. Like there's never been a team on the ground in Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide or Perth. And in fact, Melbourne is a larger marketplace than Sydney, even though we have never had a person on the ground in any of those markets. So as we scale into these new international markets, we're doing a similar model. We are localizing what needs to be localized. So, for example, press relations, public relations is something that we think is important to have localized on the ground. Content creation is something that we believe is local. You want to create content that is relevant to Americans. You should have that person in that market and in fact in that city. But the majority of our team are product, software, and engineering teams that are based here in Sydney and dedicated to each of those markets.
Incredible. I think that's like probably one of the best lessons that any founder and any investor can take away as far as looking for businesses with growth models that have that obviously exponential potential, because obviously software is between software and marketplaces, there is infinite potential that can be created. And as a final question I have is that for you, when you're thinking about Airtasker, you mentioned you're 10 years old this year. When you're thinking about the next 5 years, like what's the vision you see for Airtasker over the next 5 years?
Airtasker's vision is to empower people to realize the full value of their skills, and we believe that this is a global problem and it's a globally relevant mission, especially given the recent pandemic and the impact that's had on the economy. So, roughly, I see that there are three main areas that help us to work towards that mission. Firstly, is the sphere that we're in right now, which is creating more working opportunities. And we are really laser focused right now on create more work opportunities. The way that we do that is to be the go-to place for local services. Just make it really easy for people to buy local services because that means more jobs. So we're all about this idea right now and just focusing on work. But I think there are two spheres that sit on either side of that. One is working on how to help people create new skills. So I think there you've got things like education and helping people sort of come into that marketplace with more skills. The more skills that we bring into our marketplace, the more that we can create more jobs, and that really helps to power us towards our mission. What comes out the other side of being able to turn your skills into income is, of course, financial, is money and income. And we think there's a great opportunity to help people and empower them in that sphere as well. So with things like financial services and helping people be able to be in traditionally what has been a tough category for financial services to help out in, the freelance economy and the flex economy, other than full-time jobs. We think there's a huge opportunity there. So roughly speaking, I'd say it's work, it's skills development, and then it's helping people to manage their income and make the most of what they're earning through Airtasker.
And is there any markets which you can that you really think about for the next 5 years would be important for you to move into? I mean, international markets, that is.
For sure. So we are pretty laser focused at the moment on the UK and the US markets as our higher priority markets. And that gives us exposure to a total addressable market of around 500 million people and about $600 billion in local services TAM. And that TAM is actually fairly conservative in that it's actually built based on what people are already spending on local services, as opposed to what the unlock could be through something like Airtasker. So right now we're really focused on those two markets, but of course, as we seem to hit each sort of step of the way, our ambitions tend to widen. But I think 500 million people is enough on our plate at the moment.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. As I said, from founder to another founder, absolutely inspired by your story and what you've been able to achieve in that time. From an investor's perspective, I said you look at that, you look at your model, and obviously the margins that you mentioned, the potential across all the different sort of segments that you've got the ability to go into, and then also the international potential that goes along with it. It's an exciting opportunity, and obviously proud to from an Australian perspective, and it's always good to see Australian companies doing well in overseas markets.
Steve, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tim.